Thanks, Mel. We'll make it. I think we'll kick off. Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me. If you can't, then just feel free to drop me a message in the chat screen. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for giving up some of your time tonight, and hopefully you had a little bit of extra time there to go grab a drink, whether it was a coffee or a soft drink or something a little bit harder at this time of the day, depending on where you are. Welcome. I'm Derek Bartels, and I also have Mel Evans. Give away Mel in case we're not in order there. And we're from Edushift, and we have a series of these webinars over the next few weeks to support contemporary transformation of schools and contemporary schooling. And we thought we'd kick off with teacher collaboration, and we may know it as teacher teaming. We may know it as co-teaching. And so we're going to actually delve a little bit into that tonight, and we're going to introduce you to some guests shortly. Over to you, Mel.
Thank you, Derek. We are joined by people all around Australia and all around the world, which is very exciting. But as we start and here today, I found this. I'm sitting in Gubbi Gubbi country, which is on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and I found this beautiful piece of artwork from a lady named Shauna. And I actually thought it was very fitting for the collective because when I looked into what was behind this artwork. It spoke around a journey of a group of people that trust each other and were connecting for social good. And the artwork was showing, she talked about the connection to community from all around the country and the notion that a collective can support a united voice for change. And when I saw this yesterday, I just thought how fitting it was to share as we acknowledge where we are today. And feel free to put it in the chat where you are, but acknowledging where we are. And we give thanks and gratitude to our elders, past, present, and emerging, and what we can learn from the past, the stories, and the future. Derek.
Yeah, as mentioned, tonight we're going to focus on teacher collaboration. And there is a lot of chat about what is co-teaching, or what is teacher collaboration? What does it look like? How has it changed? How has it transformed? But more importantly, why? Why collaborate? Why work in a co-teacher setting? How does it enable rich learning? And tonight, I thought the best way to handle this was to pull a number of experts from around the world. And they kindly offered to jump in. And for some, it's morning, and for some, it's evening, and for some, it's bedtime. So, first of all, Stephen Harris, CEO and co-founder of LearnLife Barcelona. Thank you, Steve. Give him a wave. And
hello, yes.
Stephen Harris needs no introduction. A lot of us have known Stephen for a long time. A lot of you have either read his book, which we're going to put up in a later slide, and also you know Steve from his work in Australia and his work in DreamSchool, which became LearnLife, and Stephen will talk a little bit more about that as we get to Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Cindy Walsh from Freemans Bay School, principal of Freemans Bay. Thanks, Cindy, for joining us. Cindy runs an impressive school there in New Zealand, Freemans Bay. I've been there many a time, and they have a major focus on teacher collaboration. Cindy, I know it's late there, but thank you for joining us.
Kia ora koutou.
Darren Rackermann. Darren Rackermann is head of 5 to 12 at Hillcrest Christian College on the Gold Coast. And Darren's school has a wonderful culture in terms of teacher collaboration on the journey. And Darren's going to delve a little bit into what's happening in Year 9 and at his school and how it benefits the learning there at Hillcrest Christian College, which we've visited quite a number of times. Thank you, Darren.
You're welcome. It's great to be here, Derek.
Anne Knock. Many of us know Anne in a variety of modes and roles throughout the years, and Anne is currently with the Learning Future and is an education consultant based in Sydney. Anne, many of us know you, and we appreciate the thought and wisdom that you bring to these webinars and these chats. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thanks, Derek. Great to be here.
I'm going to ask the panel to think about, I'm going to jump to housekeeping with Mel.
That's all right, Derek. I just as we go through the night, we thought that there'll be so many times that we'll have questions and wonders and ponders. So feel free to write them down. We will have a Q&A at the end. But if you want to, you can also throw them in the chat. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat the whole evening. And if I see any collective themes coming up, I'll write them down and share them as well with the panel. Also, just a bit of housekeeping. If you have any tech problems, if you're still here in the chat, throw it in. But otherwise, my email's there. I have got my emails open as well, that if something goes wrong and you just need to, just shout out and I will be here to help solve any tech issues. Now, Derek, you can go.
Thanks. Sorry, Mel. I was just reading something on my notes there. Did you mention that thing about typing the word talk?
No.
Do you mind if I mention it?
Sure.
If you don't want to type your message, type your question, and you'd rather speak your message, just put the word talk in the chat, and we'll know to call on you during the night for your question. Okay. So I'm asking the panelists, our guest tonight, to think about this. What does collaborative teaching, co-teaching, teacher teaming, whatever you would like to phrase it as, what does collaborative teaching in this day and age mean for you or education or your school? We're going to ask each panel to talk for about 5 minutes, and they might talk a little bit in the context of their school as well. And as you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the speakers. So, Cindy, can I ask you to go first? Cindy Walsh is from New Zealand and Freemans Bay School in Auckland. And we all know that New Zealand has had a rich tradition of collaboration and connection and community. So, Cindy, what does collaboration or team teaching or co-teaching mean for you and your school?
Kia ora koutou. So just very briefly, a little bit of context about Freemans Bay School, Waiataro. I've been there, this is my 6th year at the school, but it's my 10th year of working in schools that work in a collaborative way and have co-teaching at the heart. Freemans Bay School is a very multicultural school in the middle of Auckland City. 75% of our learners live in city apartments, and the majority of those learners are new immigrants to New Zealand. So 75% of our learners have English as a second language. We also have a rumaki reo, which is a kura within our kura, where children learn in te reo Māori. So a really unique school. We have a very high roll turnover of students, 91% roll turnover, and high transience. Many of our learners are coming, their families are coming to study in Auckland to do their masters, PhDs, or they're coming for short-term contracts. or they come to Freemans Bay and they decide to stay longer in New Zealand, and then they move further out of the city. Auckland City has the cheapest housing in Auckland. So it is an incredibly diverse school, and we have a very diverse staff to reflect the diversity of our community, and that's obviously strategic. So collaborative teaching, I like to term it as collaborative teaching and learning, because it's not just about, the focus for us is not just about teachers collaborating, it's actually providing rich opportunities for children to collaborate, modelled by their teachers and by their leaders. So we have, our school is organised into teams. So we have year 1 and 2 as a team, year 3 and 4, year 5 and 6. And within those teams, there are hubs of co-teachers. And those hubs are mostly 3 teachers together, although some are 2. So co-teaching at Freemans Bay looks very much like those hubs of teachers working closely, really closely together. So they have responsibility for all of the learners in their space. They get to know all of the learners and the families in their space. Co-teaching is very much the co-teachers having agreed goals and agreed ways of being in the space. The co-teaching is about them using each other's strengths, but it's also about recognising areas that they have challenges in, that they can grow in. So it's learning off each other. So it's not just teaching, but it's also crafting your skills as a teacher. It's quite a distributed leadership model within that co-teaching team. And we say it's quite equitable. So not equal, it's not that equal shared responsibilities, but it's equitable, because some of those co-teachers will be new to the teaching profession. And so what their responsibilities are might look a little different to the other co-teachers who might be experienced. And it's all about setting up good, strong systems to support the collaboration. Common tracking, really close tracking of the children. Expectations around short planning meetings every afternoon once the children are gone. It's about having what we call a mates agreement, where, and I've got a copy here, where you have, you set up your mates agreement. It becomes a living document. You review it throughout the year, but it's has questions like, what is our vision as a collaborative teaching team? What are our beliefs about quality teaching and learning? What models of co-leadership do we know about and have used, and which ones do we want to strengthen, and what will we use each co-teaching model for? And it goes on. So it's about setting up an agreement, ways of being. It also talks about what if things go wrong, how will we address that? The mates agreement is one of the systems that is used to support collaboration. There are others. We have common models of very simple things that you will know about. All our teachers talk about above the line, below the line thinking. They talk about collaborative, proactive solutions for certain learners. The Dr. Green's work they talk about going into the pit when things get hard. We have a coaching culture in our school. So all those are systems and structures that support the co-teaching. Another thing is we have always provided extra release time in New Zealand. Unfortunately, teachers, it has been increased recently, but teachers don't get a lot of non-contact time where they can come together and co-plan, co-evaluate, co-reflect. But we've built in that time. So it's about valuing the extra time that actually is needed for co-teaching, but we believe the outcomes we get for our learners certainly make that extra time worthwhile. One of the challenges is if you are a co-teaching team of 2 in, say, year 5 and 6, we have, there are nearly 60 children in that space. And the expectation is that, both those co-teachers know all those learners. They know their whānau. They don't share, they try not to share out the learners. You do need to know all of those learners and their families, just as you would if you were in a single cell with a smaller class. So that can be that can be a challenge. So there are a lot of systems and I suppose teaching methods in that beginning of the year. But for our school, when we have new learners joining us all the way through the year, it's about having really good transition and really good times for those leadership team and team leaders and teachers to meet with the families and meet with the new children, so that our families are empowered to know what the settings are like and how co-teaching can enhance the experience for their children. Most of our parents, our parent community and our children have come from very different environments to our collaborative modern learning spaces. But they are incredibly accepting. They get quite excited. They love the fact that their child is going to have more than one teacher to look out for them. They love the fact that they are going to have more than one teacher that they can connect with when they go in the morning or afternoon. They love that their children have that opportunity to have teachers who may have different strengths. They love that their children have a bigger pond, if you like, of other children that they can connect with. So it's always been, at this school, with our very high new immigrants to New Zealand, it's been a more positive experience for me in terms of working alongside parents to understand collaborative co-teaching environments. It's less of a challenge at this school to bring those families along on the journey than my previous school, which was more of a higher socioeconomic area. That it was trickier. I had to do things quite differently to bring those parents along on the journey.
Cindy, yeah. I'll just jump in there. It'll be great to hear a little bit about some of the ways that your teachers come together. And I do know when I've been there, they've talked about 2 or 3 different ways of being family and using the Māori terms to actually explain that, which we might do during the panel session, if you don't mind, and elaborate on that because it's quite beautiful. Thanks, Cindy. Stephen, over to you. Stephen from LearnLife. And Stephen, what is co-teaching? I know you're coming from a very different way of schooling as well there. What does it look like and feel like for you?
That's a very good question. And I'm going to push back a little bit come one level behind that, because we have to discuss why you collaborate. And because if you're going to be in a context in a school, and I love what Cindy has outlined, and I've seen that work at Stonefields, and I know exactly what she's talking about, and the beauty of the example that's been given from Freemans Bay is an extremely good example of how you do it. The risk in general is far deeper in terms of why do we collaborate. Now, it's interesting because I'm now currently working with a group in Rwanda, in Kigali, adults who need to collaborate together in order to create a business, in order to survive and create an income, so to move out of poverty. So you're talking about collaboration being a life skill that's necessary. Now, the challenge is that for the last 10, 15 years, all around the world, they've talked about collaboration being a skill that needs to be taught and experienced through schools. And yet we have an entire global workforce that has never been trained in collaboration. So we've got to be real about the challenges as they exist. So people actually need to deeply understand why collaborate. Now, I know why I would say collaboration is the way ahead, is that for all of the reasons that Cindy has sort of outlined as well, is that a team together can go so much further. You lose all of that practical problem of having one child with one teacher, and what happens if that teacher is sick or unwell or gets pregnant or whatever else, the parents get unsettled, which is completely unnecessary in the education system. And we need to go back and say, well, that one teacher model was, where did it come from? It came out of the industrial age. And it's so inefficient for where we are now. And I guess that's, behind I guess my experience of what we're doing at LearnLife, you have to have that strong understanding of why do you want to do this? Why is it so critical? And why would I say I don't want to ever see a single classroom model again anywhere if I could do it? Because the inefficiencies and the risks are so much higher. Now, it doesn't mean that collaborative teaching is this nirvana that everyone drifts into and copes with, because it's an incredibly challenging task for an adult who's never been trained into collaboration. And there's a slide that I use quite often when I'm presenting, which goes from coexistence through to cooperation, and eventually you get to collaboration and co-creation. And now people jump into collaboration and co-creation when they can't even coexist. And so therefore you've got to take teachers through this process of learning how to do that. So in the LearnLife context, much the same as we've heard from Cindy, every adult is part of the team, whether they're a learning guide, we don't call them teachers, whether they're a learning guide or whether they're in one of the support roles, and they're expected to know every person in that community. So that's the first thing, is how do you do that? And so you have to have the structures, the protocols, and various things to support it. Now, you might be assigned to work in a particular collaborative team for a particular building block, transdisciplinary learning. That's what we're doing here. But that might only be in the morning, because in the afternoon you're in a different team and you're supporting the functioning of the maker studio or the art studio or something else. In other words, those collaborations aren't fixed at all. So you're actually learning that skill of multiple collaborations, which is life, and going through. So again, I guess I would advocate that there needs to be an education model that we need to articulate far more clearly about why should we have collaboration, what are the benefits of collaboration, and then I could go into an entirely new area, and that would be we have to learn to collaborate with AI, because my best partners at the moment are artificial intelligence. I would never be able to have helped start off what we're doing in Rwanda if I didn't have 5 collaborative agents in AI, and I have to get my head around how do I use them. and how do they use me going through. And one of the most beautiful things I've actually discovered, Leanne knows this one, I think, I've actually learned to put myself in a collaborative panel on the AI and watch myself work. Going through, but I mean, there's so many layers that we've actually got to get into. So I guess my comment here, and I'll finish off, is that as a profession, we're only scratching the surface of how collaborative, why collaborate, how collaboration works, and why it is so critical for the future. Because the kids aren't, if they want to create their own job, which is, and we know that, and the job world is shifting so fast, they've got to learn these skills. And collaboration involves deep trust, and it involves an acceptance of the other, and an acceptance of this is a joint pathway. And I'll finish there for now. And hopefully I've provoked enough thought.
And we'll have a few more comments during the panel. And for anyone that's been fortunate, like myself, to go to LearnLife in Barcelona, when you walk through there is no way that you could be well, first of all, I don't think you'd be working there if you were, but be a teacher that can lock themselves in their room and draw the curtains and create a cell, and these are my students, and no one please come in. That's completely would not be able to happen there. And it has a great sense of collaboration across, as Stephen said, across many groups and subgroups of collaborators. So it's a wonderful thing. So if you're passing Barcelona, drop in. Now over to Darren. Darren, could you tell us a little bit about what you do at Hillcrest in terms of excite and empower learners as well as teachers to be able to collaborate as teacher teams, please?
Yeah, I think similar to Stephen, the why for us is collaboration and that skill development for our students when they leave schooling and want to become those lifelong learners out in the world. Hillcrest Christian College, the background quickly, we are in a large independent Christian college. 1,850 students, E12. We now have a virtual learning community of 200 on top of that. So quite a large campus and large community. And the way we probably use co-teaching differs as you move your way through. So our junior learning community, which is prep through to 4, our students learn in large spaces themed as castle. And it's large open team teaching. So we're getting these skills of collaboration through co-teaching starting from very, very young. Then we move through into the middle phase, which we call our middle learning community, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That part of our college is actually in a renovated car park. And so 5 and 6 learn together on a floor that was a car park. 7 and 8 learn together on a floor that was a car park. And that learning occurs in what we call triads, so teams of teachers, where 3 teachers might be working on a thematic task with half of the cohort, while another triad, another 3 teachers are working with the other half of the cohort on a different transdisciplinary task. So as we're hearing from both Cindy and Stephen, the teachers really get to know the students at a deep level, because again, we've got really minimized numbers within those teams. And physically, while we have very large open plaza style learning spaces, even down to the staff rooms, we really thought through having year 7 staff living together as a small family in a physical space beside the big open spaces. So it's very easy to access for the students. 9 becomes a separate campus experience for us. And our year 9s are learning in a shopping centre opposite the beach. And that's a very outdoor and inspired service-based curriculum where our students are volunteering and serving across Coolangatta. And that again has co-teaching come through in a slightly different context, because we're doing a lot of taking traditional learning outside in the beautiful nature that we have down there, and also driving service learning through the way that we're working together as staff. And then 10, 11 and 12 is back on our main campus for that sort of traditional 3-year senior. Although in 10, 11 and 12, we still do try to leverage co-teaching as much as we can from a timetable point of view, putting on as many classes that are timetabled at the same time next to each other, and potentially having 50 students doing a math methods class with a few teachers in a co-teaching way, rather than having separate classes scattered across a senior campus. So our students feel collaboration and they get an experience of co-teaching that actually follows them right throughout college. And I think that's one of the keys that I completely agree with Stephen. There's got to be that compelling why around collaboration at the heart of why we're doing co-teaching. We probably let our staff pick and choose between different models. So we're not prescribing that you need to co-teach in a particular way, but we support that in a similar way to what Cindy was mentioning earlier through what we call growth and development programs, coaching. We try to bring it within our meeting structures. So we have real focused goals for our teams or our triads to try and move through that co-planning, co-debriefing, those sort of cycles that we've already heard that language used.
Thank you, Darren. And maybe during the panel time, you might want to, I know that you guys have referred to the multiple stages of co-teaching or teacher teaming or collaboration. We talk about the learning that needs to happen by teachers, and it's not just haphazard of being together and cooperating. It's actually collaboration. It's actually teacher teaming. And that in itself has had a lot of study done and a lot of science behind it. And so we might want to talk about those stages a bit later on. Before we go to Anne, I just thought I'd jump into the audience, a bit like Q&A here. And I can see Kathy Prestige there. Kathy, I'm just about to open your video, I think. So that's why I just thought I'd mention the name in case you were running, getting a coffee.
Lippy on.
But so Kathy and Steve might be there somewhere as well. Both are Year 6 teachers. Oh, you're both together. That's teaming. You're both there still together at this time of night. I might just spotlight you guys so we can all see. And welcome, Kathy and Steve. Kathy and Steve from Lutheran Primary School in Middle Park in Brisbane. Now, Kathy and Steve are Year 6 teachers together, and they have been Year 6 teachers for a few years, and they were actually in different cells, if I can use that, different cells in years gone by. They loved planning together, working together, doing things together, but they had to run from one end to another end to each other's classrooms, etc. So they pleaded to knock down the walls, which I think I can see behind you, and find something and do a number of things like that. And they did that off their back in terms of this is going to make life easier for us. And that's probably and so just tell us, guys, in a couple of minutes, just how's the journey going?
It's going pretty well. So we have been, like we said, we've taught 3 years, one with the wall in between us, and then 2 years with the wall. We don't have a full wall down. It's still 2 squares, but with a great door that very rarely gets shut in between. And this year we've actually got a third teacher with us for about 80% of the time, with only 49 kids. So we're very, very, very fortunate with that. So it's been a bit different this year. Steve, like you said, Steve and I have worked together, taught together, but also worked in curriculum things before then. So thankfully, Kelly, our third, is fantastic, and we've been able to rejig the team for the kids' benefit, I think. So
yeah, and as Kathy said, introducing a third person into the team has been interesting to sort of see what things Kathy and I kind of maybe instinctively did, or because we've done a lot of PD together, we've done lots of talking about how we would like to do things and so forth. So having a third person now, like it makes us realize how much we need to keep the conversations open and to involve that third person in that, and to, well, like has been mentioned with many of the other speakers, like that that coexist, and then the valuing of the other person in that new partnership as well. And looking at our systems that we have in place it's made us
be more intentional. I think we kind of did it instinctively, but now we have formalized it a lot more. And because Kelly hasn't been on all the things that we've done heaps together, and in fact we really love thinking in the contemporary learning area, whereas for her she comes from a bit more of a traditional approach. So that's been really good for us to have lots of conversations together, and makes us reassess what we're doing. So we've learned a lot from her, and it's been a good journey. We love not having the.
I really like that evolving, Kathy and Steve, and you're noticing that challenge and happen. And I'm just noticing a challenge of myself too, that I naturally invited you to, and I was not aware of now there's 3 in that space. And I should have invited Kelly. So give my apologies, because that's really not teaming right as well. So
it's all right. She's at Kylie Minogue tonight, so she's not enough. So
she should be so lucky.
I saw Kylie Minogue, and but thank you for sharing, and thank you for your passion and your determination to enable collaboration across your learning and with your students. Thank you, Kathy and Steve. Stay around because there might be questions for you.
Okay.
So moving right along, Anne, from your experience, from your work, you currently teachers and some of your study, etc. Tell us a little bit of what it means to you.
Yeah, sure. So much of what has been said so far has been very resonant with what I do. So a few years ago, coming to 3 years ago, I completed a PhD in innovative learning environments, and I took the perspective that these were the workplace of the teacher. And I saw many schools. I worked with Stephen for a long time in the building years, so many people would come and see us, and they were excited and inspired by many of those shared teaching spaces. But they would go back to their own school and have that desire to have those shared teaching spaces, and it's not something you can just do on a whim. It actually needs a whole lot of groundwork to make it happen. So I saw so many examples of these spaces designed with an intention for collaborative or co-teaching, but were becoming, people would put up bookcases and shelves and things to block them off because they didn't know what to do with them. So my thesis was all around the workplace of the teacher, the success and the sustainability of workplace change for teachers in innovative learning environments, part of a Melbourne University project. And so it's really been interesting to understand how what it was working for some of those teachers. And I talked to 2 groups of teachers in particular, and one were teachers who it wasn't working well and teachers who it was working well. And when you're in this data collection mode, comments stay with you. And one of the teachers where it wasn't working for them, and cupboards were up and bookshelves were up and they were operating separately, I can't remember what the question was, but the answer was just imagining the possibilities if we were both on the same page. And pretty much every case study group that I talked to, there was this thing about being on the same page is critical for co-teaching. I'm sure Kathy and is it Michael? They're on the same page, right? Cindy, you talked about the mates agreement. It's about getting on the same page. It's not about just putting people together and go, on you go, hope for the best. There's a whole lot of that. And I use a metaphor of the backstage. There's a whole lot of backstage work we need to do. Front stage is when we're working with the kids, and backstage is when we're doing it ourselves. But the other side of my research was all around complexity theory. And the world is complex. And if I even take a step further back on why collaborate from what Stephen was saying, one of the books I love is called The Extended Mind, The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain. And Annie Murphy-Paul, the writer there, says individual cognition, so us working alone, is simply not sufficient to meet the challenge of a world where information is so abundant, expertise is so specialised, and issues so complex. So the reason we need to do this is we can't do it alone. There's a New Zealand, she's an academic and teacher, and she talks about the paradigm of one teacher, one classroom, one subject at a time. And that this is not the right environment anymore to deal with the complexity of teaching. And then, look, I've got this new book. I'm always, whatever books I've got now, called The Disengaged Teen. I don't know if you've seen a little bit on social media about it or LinkedIn about it. And it's all about how we engage our teenagers. And this person even makes it the point here, where she's talking about the teachers getting to all the children authentically. The job is not humanly possible. The structure of one teacher, one classroom, it's a model that has to change. So I guess that's my mission. How do we help to empower, equip teachers so that they're able to do that? And as Stephen said, if a teacher's away, I saw it at Northern Beaches, if a teacher's away, that day is not lost for a bunch of kids. It's actually the other teachers rally around that teacher. You fill them in. This is what we're doing. Off you go. And I remember once, I think, Darren, you said you came to Northern Beaches when I was there, and I'd show people like Darren or maybe some people who are in the room here today. And we walked around and there was this one boy in the zone, which was 6 classes, 180 kids and 6 teachers. And this one boy was saying, they were talking to him, and this person asked, so who do you go and talk to if you've got a problem? And the boy sort of thought, looked around, and he said, whoever's the closest, because he had a relationship with all of those teachers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other example from my research is that I was observing teachers working in these environments. And I was watching one teacher dealing with a behavior problem. Now, if there's one teacher, one class, everybody has to stop, deal with the problem, and everybody has to wait patiently or not. So the class was, because of their co-teaching arrangement, everything was humming along and this teacher could focus on this child and this problem. And I watched as she sort of grappled with it, and she walked over to her colleague and just tapped her on the shoulder and said, you know what? I'm tapping out. I've gone as far as I can. Can you go in? And you think about the well-being benefits of teachers in that co-teaching environment. She didn't have to labour with that problem that she felt she was getting nowhere with, that she could actually rely on her colleagues. So one of my untested theories is that I think we will recruit and retain more teachers if there are authentic co-teaching environments where people feel supported and part of a collegial team rather than stuck in the classroom with a bunch of kids on their own all day.
Yeah, and
I could go on forever, but I'll stop there.
Yes, makes it that little bit more enjoyable for many.
Totally.
Which is great. Thank you. And look, I'm just going to thank you for that, Anne. And just before we jump to the panel with a couple more questions, I'm just about to jump. I can see someone else in the audience, Bianca Ravi. Bianca, if I can spotlight you, if you can open your video, and Bianca is Director of Learning and Innovation at Living Faith Lutheran Primary School on north of Brisbane at Marumba Downs. And Living Faith has been well known for engaging in contemporary learning transformation for many years and looking at innovative learning spaces and teachers co-teaching, etc. And not happy to rest on their laurels or be complacent. They again were re-looking because things change and new staff come in. What does co-teaching look like and what does collaborative teaching look like? And that was done. I was lucky enough to be part of that recently. And Bianca, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Derek.
You got something to share in relation to say, I know that you guys were looking at mates agreements. I know that Cindy mentioned that. And we know that New Zealand were pioneers in doing that well. How's that going, Bianca?
It's going really well. We've been doing collaborative teaching since about 2015, but we found that at the very beginning, because we sort of dived into it, we didn't have the structures and things, I guess, in place to keep everybody on track. And when you have staff turnover and things like that, maintaining that culture of collaboration, we wanted to have a little bit more of a structure in place to help and support people. So we have started the Mates Agreement this year with all of our teams. And we started a blueprint for collaboration at Living Faith. So we've got 3 teachers in a teaching space at the moment, and they're working through their Mates Agreement. We've set aside designated time, additional time. We've already had collaborative planning time, but even more so this year. And we're intentional on that to really get into that cycle of co-planning, co-teaching, co-reflecting. And the mates agreement has been integral in that, in making sure that they're holding themselves as a team accountable for what they're doing in that space. And it's been really good because even this week we've gone back and revisited our mates agreements, and a few teams are going, oh, I forgot about that. We haven't been doing that well. So it's really has been really important for holding our teams accountable.
Thank you so much, Bianca, and that's been great, and the journey, and particularly at your school to know that you've been at this for a number of years, but you're going to keep checking, keep looking at it, keep refining, keep going back, each person seeing how they work as a team, which is quite wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Bianca.
You're welcome.
We were talking a little bit before about what it looks like in the classroom. I know Anne brought up the zone at Northern Beaches, and Stephen's here, ex-Northern Beaches Christian School principal and all that. Mel, have you got that little bit of a snippet there that you might want to share? And for everyone here, I have a question of, and maybe others here have that question, but weren't going to ask. What does it actually look like? Is it very traditional with silos? You pop up when you're going to do some mathematics, you're going to talk about this part of the unit, or whether it's integrated and you're still popping, or are you actually working together in a multimodal world as a family? And we discovered this, and this would be very familiar to Stephen and Anne, because this is the zone that Anne was talking about, usually about 100 and something students here. Is that right? Anne? Stephen?
There's 180 kids, 16.
180 kids. And we're just playing a little bit of a time lapse here. And if you look closely, we'll play it a few times.
That's still on YouTube, is it, Derek? That's great.
It is. Yeah. And if you have a look here, you'll be able to catch teachers doing different things. If you look at that pause, there's one on the left, there's one in the middle, there's one working in a sort of like a campfire expert guru session up there. We're just going to go back to that again. And you can see here that you've also got teacher Roman and Stephen and Anne. You might want to explain this as well, because you were very much part of this, I remember.
Oh, yes. I guess the zone for me was the opportunity to, I guess, demonstrate it at a really critical time for the children. I think at that age of upper primary, kids are ready for something that's quite different. And I think we definitely found that. We did ultimately bring that collaborative approach to learning all the way down to 5-year-olds. Again, if I make a comment there, the parents who sort of were panicking that they didn't have one teacher for kindergarten, and I had to then point out, well, they've just come from preschool where you have 4 or 5 adults legally in the room. You have to have more than one. So why are you suddenly thinking at the age of 5 that you've got to narrow down to one again? Again, it's just cultural and history. So yeah, in the zone, in that context, if we give an example of what happened in mathematics, I guess that for me was one of the best examples that I think the team sort of developed, and that was that they were ultimately adhering to the New South Wales curriculum. We were at a school in that context. The team had actually then taken a 2-year cycle and placed all of the topics that were in the curriculum across a weekly agenda. On a Friday afternoon or a Friday, the kids got told what the next week's topic was. Now, I guess this is where the beauty of the collaboration came in.
Yeah.
And the kids could actually choose, if they wanted to self-learn over the weekend, and then they could opt into an assessment on the Monday to demonstrate that they fully understood it. And if they fully understood it, then they were given the opportunity to go into a group which was largely self-managed, where they went into ridiculous lengths to go deeper into that topic. But it also meant that you actually had the kids who were busy with sport or visiting family, whatever else. Well, they opted that week to go into the general workshop approach, and you had 3 or 4 teachers who took that process through. Kids were then not told that they had to then go to this particular workshop. They were told, on Tuesday and Thursday at these times, we're going to be covering this particular point. If you need to understand more about it, you opt in. And then it also freed up a teacher and often with an assistant to work with the kids who were struggling on that particular topic. So again, it actually did incredible work to get rid of the idea that I'm either good at maths or I'm hopeless at maths. It actually nuanced it down to, okay, I struggle with this topic perhaps, but I'm absolutely fine on the other ones. I don't know whether Anne wants to add anything else to that.
One thing,
Yes, Anne?
just one thing. Backstage and same page, those things I talked about, every morning before school, the teachers as a team had a 15-minute stand-up in front of a whiteboard with the week's schedule there. They always knew what was happening, what class was going somewhere, excursion, someone's casual teacher might have been in. They always started the day on the same page. And that was a really powerful, quick win for them to get that working across the day.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's actually something that happens in Barcelona every day as well. Yeah, it starts off that way.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Just so that we're keeping the time, we've got about 4 minutes. If anyone's got a question, please put it in the chat and Mel will be able to share it. I'm going to ask each of our guests to maybe suggest an item, a resource, an idea, something to take away for everyone here to take away to enable collaborative teaching, or something to even think about. It could even be the reference, etc. So just going around the room, Cindy.
I think one of my takeouts and some food for thought, I suppose, is you really must be prepared to be modeling for your teachers. If your expectation is that you're expecting to see co-teaching and teachers, working at that high level of trust in the same space, strengths, asking for feedback on perhaps areas that you find challenging, observing each other, then you need to do that at the leadership level as well. Derek, you've seen my team's office space. We work around a really big jelly bean shaped, interesting shaped table. We're all in there together. We have 3 DPs, myself, but we also have space for others to join us when they have release time, and anyone can come and join us. And we have children there as well joining us. And it's a fun space. We actually have lots of toys, games. We try to keep the fun in things. We play a game of Uno with the students to have a bit of relaxation, but it's very much a collaborative space. We also, as a leadership team, have our mates agreement, and we go through the same questions as what the co-teachers do with their mates agreement. When we meet together, we always look at our agenda around the Adam Grant's 4 reasons to meet, and as we know, one of those is about collaboration. So we always incorporate those agenda items. So it's about that. You really need to be thinking hard about how you are modeling that and how
That's very good, Cindy. No, it's great advice. And looking at Stephen and Anne here in one of the past schools, I remember seeing the whole leadership team. Probably one of the first schools I did see a whole leadership team. Used to sit around a big ovally type table, and Stephen, you were the head there, and you just had a spot on the corner of the table somewhere too, just like everyone else, and just all sat around, which was really good. And Darren, I'm not sure how it works at Hillcrest, but I know that you guys collaborate in a whole lot of other ways. Stephen, over to you. takeaway idea?
A takeaway idea or an encouragement. You can't enter into this half-hearted. You've got to if you dabble at the edges, you're going to be creating a whole raft of other issues as well. You've got to then say, no, this is the model. We commit to it and we make it work, and we recognize that you fail forward going through. But if it's a question of I want to try opening up the door with a neighbouring classroom, okay, that's fine. But look, it's 2025. The world is changing. Get the team together and become intentional. There we are.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Darren, well, I'll just jump to Darren next because it was a lead into there. It really does require a lot of professional learning, doesn't it, Darren?
Yeah, and I think to just pick up quickly on something Stephen just shared, I think you have to model a culture of failure from the top and allow staff to fail, because as we're hearing, it's not easy. Being intentional is really important, but I think there does also need to be, that culture where staff are not too scared to get in and follow through because they may fail. And so professional development and systems and processes around that, Derek, help to reinforce that culture that it's okay to fail. We're going to have an intentional model and follow through, but we may get things wrong, and that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Darren. And that was that your point to end with there, Darren?
Yeah. I
Beautiful.
think that modeling that culture, and so that there's not a culture of fear. It's the culture. It's really important.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Anne.
One quick quote from a head teacher of a school in Denmark I visited last year, and with co-teaching in shared spaces. And he just opened his comment to us with saying, teaching is too complex to do it alone.
Beautiful.
That's it.
Too complex to do it alone. And we haven't done it alone tonight. We've done it together and we've done it across the world. And, it's so easy to do that. And can we all thank, and I can hear the cheers in the background, can we all thank these wonderful people for joining us at different times from around the world? Thank you, Darren. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, Cindy, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, everyone, for inviting us too.
Great.
And
thank you.
that was wonderful. There's a recording of this, so I'll send it out to all of you. And also, I'd like to remind you that we have a number of these free webinars that we're doing. Another one's coming up soon called Beyond the Bells, and it seems for contemporary transformation of schools, particularly secondary. How do you shake up the timetable? Why does the timetable get in the road? So it's about rethinking timetables. Then we've got another one coming up called Real World Ready Schools and Communities. We all know that connection to external experts is very important in schools, not just dropping in because one of the parents happens to be a GP, but how do you intentionally connect external experts into the learning and make them part of the family and part of the ecosystem? That's coming up as well. From tonight, there'll be a number of resources, and you can see one of them on the screen now. Stevens and LearnLife have produced that book, and you could log on and buy it, but Stevens kindly put a link on the website, the actual LearnLife website. If you go and find it on there, it's not hard to find. You can download a free copy and complimentary copy.
And I do need to say, I did the preface, and I helped with many of the stories, but it's actually written by Devon Carberry, who's the director of innovation at LearnLife. So I should actually
thank you. Yes, I should have mentioned that too. But thank you, and it's collaborative effort, and Devon did a lot of the work in that book. So I would encourage you, because I jump in there, and I actually now have bookmarked a number of things where I go grab some quotes or need a bit of stimulus, etc. from then. It's well worth grabbing that if you get that from the LearnLife website. Well, there you go. Thanks, Anne. And so we'll be putting all those resources, plus some of the ones you've heard tonight, and Cindy mentioned a few names that I've got a copy of, and we'll share those resources with all of you and some of the people that couldn't make it as well. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It's 8:04. It's time for bed, Cindy. It's time for work, Stephen. It's time for a drink, and Darren, Mel, and I. So thank you all for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Derek. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Bianca, and thanks, Kathy and Steve.